Listen, sometimes the internet is unpredictable and this is not one of those moments. Clipping together Andy Pan's bad takes and saying, yeah, this anti-woke thing is pretty crazy now that the Act-Man has said it for me, does not make you special. It's just the new trend, and by all means, have at it, be my guest. He made that bed and now he's got a lie in it. But I find that conversation to be very similarly lowbrow. It just doesn't interest me. Instead, I want to talk about the other grift. And by grift, I mean the new slang meaning of grift, not the dictionary definition, but fair is fair and what's good for the goose is good for the gander. A quick aside, I hope that you'll excuse my change of background content. You can watch me fail as an artist in real time. Enjoy. Anyways, remember when I said that if one side of the culture war is insidious, then the other side is equally insidious? Well, today we will examine one progressive reaction to NovemberHotel's video titled, Yes, Woke Games Are Bad Games, and this reaction is provided by Emma Thorne titled, Anti-Woke Gamers Being Shallow Man Babies. To preface, I do not wish any harm or bear any ill will toward Emma Thorne. Hope she does well, but I will absolutely meet her at the conversational level and standard that she sets so that she can feel included. We're gonna skip introductions and go straight into where she hits the current colloquial meaning of woke in the gaming space. Again, I think people should stop using this term, and this video is going to prove me right. Again.
It is generally accepted to describe something that prioritizes diversity and inclusivity over, say, quality. Hiring women and people of colour instead of the best person for the job, that sort of thing is what they kind of mean by woke when they say it.
Bingo.
For anybody out there who is watching this feeling that they're a normal person, they're not racist or sexist or homophobic, but they do feel like it's all a bit much, it's all gone a bit mad, it is a bit just too woke out there, everything's political, I would encourage you to consider, just sit on the fact for a minute, that the majority of the mainstream biggest proponents of anti-wokeism are racist, sexist, homophobic, etc. Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, basically anybody involved with the Daily Wire, Neagle Feagle, and anybody involved with GB News.
Ooh, not great. So you acknowledge that there is an audience that is politically neutral and that your prior definition can very much resonate with this audience, and then your defense is that it is a fact that some famous American and British people that are right-leaning are racist, sexist, and bigoted, and because they feel the same way, if you don't want to be racist, sexist, and bigoted, you also need to disagree with that feeling that diversity and inclusiveness has gone too far in tipping the scales into an animal farm territory. That doesn't make sense. What makes it worse is that you just state it as a fact. And I know that later in the video, you're going to criticize NovemberHotel for not showing studies and sources, but here you are saying some pretty nasty things about specifically named people and places without offering anything. And on top of this, you're specifically speaking to an audience that doesn't know anything about this. That's the very definition of insidious.
This conversation around wokeism gone mad is potentially using moderate people who feel the effects of a reduction of privilege.
What she means by a reduction of privilege is that if you identify as a male, you can't get an internship at Ubisoft, which is quite plainly the discrimination of a sex without a thought or consideration of context of that individual. The ultimate and rarest minority, by the way. And pray tell, who is the arbiter of this so-called privilege reduction mechanism and how is it quantified? Can I reduce your privilege by denying you an internship because you are a woman? Or is that only sexism when I say it?
It is very possible that you can consider yourself anti-woke, a lot like people consider themselves anti-feminists who actually are feminists in terms of ideals, who actually agree in equality of rights regardless of gender, for example, would actually not necessarily be anti-woke if you look at what the actual meaning of woke is.
No, feminism is not synonymous with egalitarianism, which is the belief in human equality in all the ways that you claim. You could say that first-wave feminism and part of second-wave feminism, but it's incredibly fractured after that point. You don't get to bundle all the radical and wildly incoherent parts of feminism with egalitarianism and say, oh, see, common folk, we are in agreement. According to Pew's Research Center, 43% of adults that say that feminism describes them well also say that it is polarizing, and 45% of them would not describe it as inclusive. Almost half of feminism disagrees with you by their own admission.
I would just try and sit with the fact that there are people trying to manipulate and radicalize a moderate audience, and this is a great way to do it.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at one of them.
NovemberHotel's, yes, woke video games are bad games. Games are too woke nowadays. I feel like GamerGate really fucked up game responses and reactions and just like amateur games journalism. Just absolutely. GamerGate, if you're not familiar, I won't go into it in massive detail, but it was a sort of a period of intense harassment of specific female journalists.
Are you talking about Zoe Quinn, Brianna Wu, or Anita Sarkeesian? Because none of them were ever games journalists. But in any case, since you've demonstrated that you don't know what you're talking about, I've done a whole video series on this, and there's plenty of other YouTubers that do a better job than both of us. So I'd suggest that if you are actually a moderate audience, you should go and check it out and get up-to-date information, instead of taking Emma at her word.
Instead, the biggest deterrent for modern gamers is game studios and publishers' disgusting focus on creating games for the non-existent modern audience.
The non-existent modern audience. Women don't play games.
Not what he said, but you wish he did.
In other words, the obsession with creating woke video games.
Look at this, it's like, look, see, in this you're playing a woman of color. Isn't that fucking mental?
Not what he said, but you wish he did.
I literally follow some groups of specifically black female gamers.
Black girl gamers also happen to be the consultants that worked on Forspoken. Forspoken has many problems, but one of the forefront problems was that the main character, Faye, was extremely unlikable and unrelatable, and more specifically belligerent. Black girl gamers consulted on Faye's representation. In my opinion, the consultancy was not worth the money, but it doesn't matter now because the studio is permanently closed down due to Forspoken's failure, and now one can only speculate over what may have been if different choices were made. As in this point of time, this is the only contribution that Black Girl Gamers has ever made into the mainstream gaming scene.
Oh, shut up. Dragon Age Veilguard better be good or I'm gonna fucking riot. You know, all the Dragon Age games let you be gay.
Aware.
Assassin's Creed Shadows. Oh, that's a brilliant example. It's a great example of the fact that this is all built around knee-jerk reactions that people have when they see something that is not representing them. White men are not the majority in this game.
This is such a bottom feeder take. No one has asked for a white male samurai. They would like a Japanese samurai in a game set in feudal Japan. You're just lying to your audience.
With Assassin's Creed Shadows, a lot of the more recent Assassin's Creed games have had you play as multiple protagonists, and play as two different protagonists. One of them is a samurai known as Yasuke, who is black. Man's literally a real historical figure.
Don't conveniently leave out that these protagonists were always native to the setting in which the game took place, and up until this point, none of them were historical figures. So yes, this is a deviation in the series, and it's not even consistent with the character that is standing next to him. Anyways, no one argued that he wasn't real. The argument is that his status as a samurai, as Westerners understand it, is questionable, and that much is later conceded by Ubisoft in a formal apology to the Japanese community, among other historical inconsistencies, but probably the worst one was the Funko Pop that they released with the characters with the broken Torii Gate behind them. You know, the monument in Nagasaki after the atomic bomb? Ubisoft has since dodged the Tokyo Game Show, and the game has been postponed until next year. I would suggest that the focus in historical accuracy may have been misplaced, and that it is a costly mistake.
Now, I think it's important to note that a lot of these games are usually objectively bad or average games with or without the wokeness in them. But a company that prioritizes DEI and ESG scorecards...
Okay, we're gonna have to go back to glossary corner, I'm afraid. I would say this is coded language.
It's not coded language. You can Google ESG and it's the first hit.
DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, the sort of thing when a normal person just hears that, they wouldn't have a problem with it.
Clever. So at the beginning, you were talking about the claim that diversity and inclusion may be putting equality in the back seat, but here you're using the word equity, and if you aren't defining, then what you mean is not equality of opportunity, but rather an equality of outcome. I think it might be because many normal people wouldn't agree with that. You can't chop and change between the two interchangeably because even though they sound similar, they very much are not.
ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. As I understood it, it was more about being sort of environmentally conscious as well as socially conscious when you're investing and things like that. So it's a little bit strange to bring that in to the woke conversation.
No, it's not that strange. ESG scores are used to pump up your attractiveness to investors. Developers and publishers aren't like McDonald's. It's difficult for them to move in the environmental space because their products are mostly digital. Blizzard using paper straws is not going to have the same impact as McDonald's does. This kind of bottlenecks the video game industry into the social governance aspect. As a parallel, the American Gaming Association, so yes, it's gambling, but their commitment to ESG statements include a whole section on DEI. So yes, there is absolutely a direct link between investor money and ticking diversity boxes. This also explains absurd actions like Blizzard's proud announcement of the Blizzard King diversity tool giving their characters number scores based on gender, race, and ethnicity.
It means it's very bad and terrible for studios to focus on diversity and inclusivity, is what is being said here. Literally what is being said here.
It is literally not what is being said here. The claim is around inauthenticity.
This is what gets me always with this conversation, especially again in the hiring in the workplace and that sort of thing, is the idea that no, it should be the best person for the job. And I wonder why they have this instinctive reaction that the best person for the job couldn't be somebody who isn't a straight white man.
No one is saying that but you.
They've put these characters in for the sake of wokeness. A woman of colour can't be a complex and interesting character to play.
No one said that either. I think what you will find is that we would like one that is really good and not co-opting a franchise character that already exists or killing off a fan favorite to make space for them as a successor. Everyone knows that it is creatively bankrupt. Gamers want that awesome character, whoever that may be, but we want it to come authentically. A good example is Dion from Final Fantasy XVI. I don't know anyone that cares that he's gay, and he's generally a really well-accepted character within the gaming community.
DEI ensures less competent employees will be hired on for the job.
That's not true. Just because a company is not prioritizing straight white men doesn't mean that they will be hiring people less competent. The problem is that there are all of these women, queer people, people of color, who are highly trained, talented professionals that don't get opportunities that are given by default to people with a certain level of privilege.
No, what you're saying is not true. DEI isn't simply deprioritizing straight white men where they were once preferred. It actively excludes straight white men. For example, see Ubisoft's mentorship program. You are technically correct that someone that fits the currently desired diversity quality is not unqualified, but it is also true that these opportunities are created by delisting the competition. Consider the following scenario. Steve, Ben, and Matt work at Ubisoft with Mary. Because there are 3 men and 1 woman, to achieve an equitable workplace, the workplace must hire another woman. Tim, Jeffrey, Johnny, and Stephanie apply for the job. The hirer now has the conflict of interest where they need a woman to balance the workforce, but everyone interviewed really well. As a result, the hirer goes through the motions, thanks Tim, Jeffrey, and Johnny, welcomes Stephanie. Stephanie is qualified, but the success is hollow. And let's pretend for a moment that she wasn't very qualified. She is now set up for a really bad scenario where everyone is going to figure out that she was the token hire. How is it not obvious that that achieves the opposite of what you're saying? But let's go back to our original scenario. Luckily, she is very qualified and Stephanie is great. Is it not obvious that Tim, Jeffrey, and Johnny have nothing to do with Steve, Ben, and Matt that already work at the company? They aren't straight white men, the box that you are talking about. They are very specifically Tim, Jeffrey, and Johnny, the individual human beings. Not to mention that they may be supporting someone at home that does fit into one of your diversity criteria. Now imagine that you actually went and told Stephanie, hey Stephanie, just so you know, your competition was pretty close, but don't worry, we didn't consider them because we need more women. Too many men, right? How is Stephanie supposed to feel? Pretty disillusioned, right? Once you put what is coming out of your mouth into a practical scenario and you don't lie about it, it's pretty clear that it's strangely cruel. It doesn't work without lying that the mechanism is trying to balance these arbitrary categories. Okay, you currently fit into one of the arbitrary categories, but what happens when your category is no longer preferred by society? Because society does shift. So where are you in the next 10 years? Are you still going to hold that conviction? Or are you just talking and really you're just today's progressive and tomorrow's conservative?
And that if a company employs, like, an even gender split, then those women were all chosen just for being women and they're going to be incompetent and not talented. Like, excuse me.
You're excused. So yes, in many cases, a 50-50 gender split would mean that you would have an increased level of incompetence within at least one of the genders because most occupations aren't 50-50 splits naturally. I am aware that not everyone is heterosexual, but heterosexuals are the majority of the workforce worldwide. Simply, the ability to birth a child and the requirements to do such a thing, would you choose to do it, presents one person with a very different perspective on time preferences to someone that cannot bear a child, but maybe that person may need to take care of someone who can. That alone leads to pretty big differences to how people approach their career, work-life balance, and other aspects of their life. That's just one tiny example. So what exactly is the 50-50 split by occupation, again, an arbitrary category, supposed to achieve?
Like seeing a workforce that is more racially diverse and assuming that the people of colour aren't as highly skilled as the white people, that's just racism.
Not what he said, but you wish he did.
And the problem that diversity and inclusivity hopes to solve is the majority of those jobs going to people of certain races and etc.
Oh, it's positive racism. Jeez.
It's not that there's all of these competent white people and then we've got to hire some black people who don't know what they're doing.
No one said that.
We've had to hire this Asian woman who doesn't know what she's doing just for the diversity points. DEI equals incompetence is just pure bigotry. It's just racist. It's just sexist. There is no other way of looking at that. It's crazy. So this is just factually wrong.
How is it factually wrong though? It hopes to solve these problems, but if you read this Harvard Business Review article, you can see that it has instead formed this industrial complex around it that is really often not achieving the goal it seeks to achieve, but rather enforces racist and sexist stereotypes. So there is evidence that it's not working as you would hope, and most government grants in DAC countries for video game industry prefer diversity metrics in their selection process, so even the ability to start working in the gaming industry is biased towards the quote-unquote equity-deserving groups instead of the best projects. Where is the fact part in what you're saying?
The reason that games are bad most of the time is because of investors, production companies, etc. It's a top-down thing.
Everyone agrees with that. DEI is a top-down thing.
And ESG funding means more time will be spent on hitting the woke criteria throughout every aspect of the game.
Why would hitting woke points, aka why would including people of colour and you know, queer relationships and stuff, what's that taking time away from?
It's not about time. So here in Australia, if I include a diverse character in my game, or if I hire someone of a diverse background, or my game serves a diverse demographic, the government is more likely to give me $30,000. It's not about time, it's about money. ESG does the same thing, but from another source.
This is so indicative of the mindset that I was trying to describe earlier, where if you're like a certain type of person with a certain level of privilege, you view yourself as the default. So like making games starring straight white men in their 30s is the default, and doing anything else takes extra time and effort.
You're reaching.
Woke, especially gamers, right? The anti-woke gamers are always trying to say these aren't complex characters. These aren't complex, interesting characters.
They're not complex and interesting characters. Just watch the cinematic trailer. It's just a Guardians of the Galaxy vibe knockoff that's touted for having the first black trans playable character.
They boil their reactions down to such a basic, like, there are women in this game that I'm not attracted to, and therefore they are bad characters, and that destroys the game.
Literally no one thinks that. It's actually the opposite. We don't think many of them are well made, and we would like them to take more care in making them authentically. For example, I'm not sexually attracted to Zarya in Overwatch, but I am attracted to her in the sense that I enjoy her design, silhouette, and the attention to detail in relation to the gameplay, and that sells it for me. But more importantly, in comparison, Overwatch characters are instantly recognizable and their silhouette and design conveys their role. So in Concord, one of the characters that was on the screen named Dawes is a healer, and you just cannot tell that. Concord goes out of its way to unlearn everything within the hero shooter genre all the way back to TF2, and they did so quite boldly. So yes, they are just bad characters, not I don't want to have sex with them characters. They are so bad that there is an entire meta on YouTube of freelance artists that go and fix the characters.
Are you supposed to be attracted to every video game character? Just the reaction to like, ugly people in my game, which is so subjective. Like, every game should conform to your specific desires, your specific romantic sexual desires. That's so bizarre. Why would games do that?
Okay, yeah, you can get mad about it, but they couldn't find enough people that did find them appealing at all, in any sense of the word. They couldn't keep the servers open. At what point do you address reality? Guys like NovemberHotel didn't make that happen. That was the general consensus, and that has been the general consensus ever since the first cinematic trailer. It's just that you were too lazy to look up that people didn't pick up the free beta. People disliked the characters so much, they wouldn't even try it out for free.
What's ugly here?
The silhouette, the pose, the lack of strong shapes, and the lack of interesting values. Also the really corny red flag. Or how about the fact that she just looks like she found that helmet in the back of her closet?
It's an FPS, like, multiplayer game. You barely see the characters. You're all in armor and you're running and jumping around shooting each other. How much is your game impacted by the ugliness of the characters? Were the characters in TF2 particularly attractive?
No, but the point is going straight over your head. The TF2 characters are aesthetically appealing and follow the design principles that I've already alluded to. And also, the characters were pretty important in that game, because if you remember, they each had a trailer before the game released. Everyone loved those, and that was a huge part of the marketing. People were absolutely sold on the visual appeal and the fantasy of those characters.
Video games are a visual medium, and good character design does sell games.
Some video games are not purely a visual medium, and visually impaired people can enjoy video games that are well made in multiple areas.
You are the annoying kid at school that makes pedantic points that no one asked for when the other kids just want to go out to lunch.
This is men are very visual creatures.
No, it is predominantly a visual medium. In fact, it's in the dictionary definition. You're just being obtuse because you want to paint the guy as horny.
I need all my fictional women to be hot, because I've never touched a real woman, and I never will.
See what I mean? He never said that. Why is touching women some weird metric? Does touching more different women make you better in some way? How does this stupid game work? Oh, wait, I get it now. You're calling a stranger an incel based on your own bias. You're actually as sharp as Play-Doh.
With characters that were recognizable, badass, and heroes people would want to cosplay as or buy a poster of. But instead, it became the biggest flop in video game history.
It's like the laziest view of marketing, making hot characters.
No, he said recognizable and badass, not hot. And he's 100% right. No one is going to cosplay as these characters when Overwatch characters exist. People love cosplaying as aesthetically pleasing characters, and yes, sexy characters as well. It's not about merchandising the characters, but if you cannot merchandise the characters in a hero shooter, you're not even at the starting line. If you can't even get people to try the game for free, it doesn't matter what the gameplay is like.
The game was in horrible shape as of 18 months ago before release. Not even monetization.
This guy at the bottom is doing a real stellar job of looking interested in the conversation.
The game was in horrible shape as of 18 months ago before release.
Mediocre men on the internet with microphones. Just a plague.
What does that make you, a rejected tracer skin? Like, holy shit. What is your problem with the dude just sitting there listening?
None of the problems there are wokeness. None of the problems there are ugly characters. That's just, like, that's purely a failure of planning.
8 years and $400 million to produce a game that tags itself as LGBTQ+ and political that is so unlikable they can't get people to try it for free is not just a failure in planning. It is belligerent and confident ignorance. Imagine a workplace that for 8 years you could not say, hey, I think this guy sucks. I think we need to redesign him. What kind of leadership would create that environment and would also want to make a game for an LGBTQ+ and political audience? I'll let you decide, dear viewer.
Next, let's take a look at Dustborn.
The black kid dresses like a writer. Does he know anything?
You are racist.
I don't even need to say anything about this game.
It sounds like this is his sort of thing, like it's making fun of the sort of wokeness.
It sounds like you're clueless. This is definitely not what is happening here. I had the extreme displeasure of having to watch this gameplay for research, and it's a sin that you can just watch it for like 5 seconds and sit there and say, oh yeah, I think it's done for comedy reasons. It never attempts to press its tongue into its cheek.
And no, I'm not the target audience, but the target audience is practically non-existent, and often don't play games in the first place, which is
Ooh, he hasn't specified what that audience is.
Ooh, I'll do it. He means people that sit on Twitter and virtue signal, but have no intent of putting their money where their mouth is.
He's saying without saying that people of colour, that women, that queer people don't really play games, but without having to actually say it out loud by saying the words. It's all coded language, baby.
Oh shit, yeah, that's right. I forgot to mention, yeah, okay. So what you do is you follow Grums on Twitter, he's our leader, and then you DM him with a racial slur, and he will send you the codes and a dog whistle. And that's how you become a real gamer. What the fuck is wrong with you? No one is saying anything in code. It's a non-existent modern audience because it doesn't exist. And we know it doesn't exist because they are not buying the products that are made for them. No one cares about their sex or racial identity. It is not anyone. The only consistency with the modern audience is that when publishers and devs say that they are making something for the modern audience, everyone knows that they mean that they are going to tack on LGBTQ+ and progressive trappings in a tacky and inauthentic way. Are there gamers that are going to blame LGBTQ+ and progressive individuals? Absolutely. And vice versa. Both sides are dumb. But NovemberHotel in this video here, he hasn't done any of that, except within your own mind. Every time he's apparently said something unhinged, it's been extrapolations based on your own bias.
But instead, the narrative and dialogue was very obviously Sweet Baby Inc. influenced.
Sweet Baby is a story writing company hired to supplement video game studios' writing staff. And the company is transparent about their goals of approaching writing with a focus on representation and marginalized groups. And so, straight white men are angry about it.
A Sweet Baby Inc. employee incited harassment and brigading against a Brazilian male gamer, so not a white man, in an attempt to get his Steam account banned because he had made a Steam curator page that exposed the games that worked with Sweet Baby Inc. This curator page only had information that was already on the Sweet Baby Inc. website. The harassment backfired, causing the Streisand effect, and games journalists rushed to defend Sweet Baby. Ash Parrish, a games journalist, was exposed when a Twitter DM leaked showing messages where she deliberately left out the harassment of the Brazilian man because it would have been inconvenient for the message that she was trying to convey. And surprise, surprise, the message she wanted to convey was that gamers were misogynists. Sweet Baby has made its bed, and many people that are unhappy with it do what they are doing out of principle. And really, at this point, it's not really a loss. They don't make anything useful. You have been living under a rock.
It's so crazy to me that they highlight the real problems with the game. Like the big problems, like, again, live service issues and bad development and, you know, whatever. And then they're like, but it's the liberal woke stuff that ruined it.
In regard to Suicide Squad, again, here's Lex Luthor's journal on Wonder Woman. No one read this and came to the conclusion that this progressive lip service is anything kin to Lex Luthor. Is it why the game failed? Absolutely not. But it was definitely a waste of money, and it's a valid question as to why it's even there. It's not the cement block around your feet, it's the zip ties that you saw on your killer's car a week earlier. Progressive pandering has become the mining canary for terrible games, and I think that the fact that progressive individuals accept that as valid progress and furthermore try to champion it is shameful. Like, holy shit, if you're going to fight for something, at least fight for something you can be proud of.
As if these companies aren't 100% money focused.
Yes, that's the point. They're 100% money focused.
Let me tell you, we live in a society.
Every time a progressive person says we live in a society, they always follow by saying,
and that society is capitalist.
And yeah, okay, I cheated, I've watched this before. But the Sweet Baby Inc. employee that decided to sock it to gamers in the Steam community said exactly the same thing right before going off the rails and just attacking white men in general.
And as much as there are usually smaller companies doing their best to actually promote some diversity and inclusivity, which is a good thing, okay? Stop being a racist.
People aren't racist or bigoted for not wanting unsolicited diversity and inclusivity promotion. If you think about it, if a small business is doing its diversity and inclusivity thing, that should be completely invisible to the customer. We have our own problems in our own lives. We don't really care as long as the product that we paid for is good and not diminishing in quality. What bothers us is when it's surface level. And that's not racist or bigoted to be bothered by that. That's like saying that it's not annoying when charities in your local shopping center harass you because they're doing it for a good cause. You can be annoying no matter what your intention is. No one is obligated to like you based on intent.
If woke game design, whatever the fuck that is, was really the number one thing destroying games and ruining their sales, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it because they want your money. They don't get anything out of social consciousness points. They want cold hard cash.
They evidently don't want our money. In the case of Dustborn, all of its funding came out of taxpayers' pockets. Similarly, ESG funding is upfront and based on the company's intentions and policies, like shown with the American Gaming Association. That's simply the result of how trying to apply DEI affects DAC countries, in the same way metas evolve around government grants. For example, look at how Microsoft tries to propagate and advertise DEI practices by using a combination of Google Game Study and a Newzoo study that includes dishonest grouping to boost the seeming importance of DEI within the study. It even includes mobile phone options in the PC section. Microsoft owns most Western studios, and this is how they try to use statistics. By comparison, Capcom polls their audience directly and asks their audience questions about actual games. How is Capcom able to achieve a better sample size than Microsoft? And before you say Japanese audience, America was the largest contributor to the survey. You know what no one said? No one said, I want to be represented. What they said is that they want exhilarating gameplay and unique and attractive characters. If you only look at Japan's data, those two are reversed. The big takeaway is that Western games industry primarily uses statistics to sell DEI incentives and tell everyone what they are doing and why it's right. And it seems like studios in the East, like Capcom, seem to be more likely to use statistics to actually poll their audience and celebrate great legacy. Capcom isn't perfect, but they have more hits than misses. Look at gacha games, they are constantly surveying their player base and asking them what they want. Everyone knows this though. I think you're the only one that seemingly doesn't.
Hey, but I want to compare Suicide Squad with a game called The First Descendant. There's a lot of similarities actually. Both are third-person live service looter shooters. In fact, looking at gameplay side by side, most people would say that Suicide Squad looks like a higher budget version of The First Descendant. And that's because that's what it is. But why does The First Descendant have 30,000 players right now and Suicide Squad has 300? I have a strong suspicion that character design has more to do with it than gaming journalists would have you believe.
Gaming journalists, aka the woke agenda. If this was true, if it was only like super attractive character design.
He said that he suspects that character design has more to do with it than gaming journalists would have you believe. Not only super attractive character design, like you're about to go on about.
That made a game popular. No one would play Kirby. No offense to Kirby. Who would be playing Super Monkey Ball? Or Pikmin? What about Spore? It's just so crazy.
None of these examples include guns, and they don't include guns because they are designed for kids. I like Kirby too, but I liked Kirby more as a kid. But again, this is all rooted in your overall thesis that this is somehow an only sexual thing, and none of it's being extracted by this guy's words. It's only being out of your own mouth on his behalf.
And also openly equating attractiveness with being skinny and white and straight, and having no shame about saying that publicly on the internet.
Oh no, you don't. You said super attractive, but let's say the characters are attractive because they are. Skinny is not the right term, that would imply that they are unattractively thin, and that's incorrect. They are just artistically proportioned to be aesthetic and well within BMI scope, if you saw a woman of this build in the real world. They are predominantly white, but no one said straight. You pulled that one right out of your ass. Liking these characters and finding them attractive is not exclusive to only liking these characters and only finding these characters attractive. So no, it does not equate to the entirety of attractiveness to skinny, white, and straight. You seem desperate, and you aren't making sense. No one needs to feel shame about liking these characters or finding them attractive because you have this cognitive problem.
Look at how they massacred Harley by making her walk like a normal person.
Come now, it's a lot more than the walk. I mean, it's a disgrace that graphical fidelity somehow decreased substantially over the course of 9 years. Not to mention that the lighting was spectacular. Yes, the bat is placed up so you can see your ass, and it looks better. I think most women, given the choice between those two, would prefer to look like the one on the left.
Women do not walk like this.
Neither did the character in the footage.
We would have such terrible hip problems. Probably really fierce glutes, though.
No, you would not get fierce glutes from that. Do not listen to her, I would advise squats. It's just far better for balanced development in all areas of the lower body.
You seen the thing where somebody swapped out Catwoman's model in a video game for Batman, and Batman walked like that, and it looks ridiculous.
Fresh air, freedom, and darkness. How shall we celebrate? I know a couple of poor, defenseless museums.
Holy shit, you mean the female character with the aloofness of a cat that likes to toy with men's desires moves in a way that would appeal to men's desires? No shit, Sherlock.
But it appeals to this specific male fantasy.
It appeals to most male fantasies.
So because he is not as attracted to the way this character walks, he thinks that's ruining video games.
I don't think that's just about the walk. But no, he thinks that they ruined Harley Quinn. And they did. It's clear as day. The clip is right there.
If it's only about what's visually attractive in the most conventional mainstream sense, why don't all my male characters in video games look like that?
So what you're missing here is that Harley's costume was DLC that was selected by player vote. That is what the majority of people that were invested in the game wanted. If people spent money on oily men in tiny pants, they would also be in these games. They do exist in some games, but let's not pretend like anyone is investing in them to the same level. It makes me feel like you can only think in terms of arbitrary equity quotas, when the spending habits of people just don't care.
Because we never considered that male characters exist for people to drool over, for people to masturbate to, whereas women characters, that's how they're viewed by people like this. It's gross. It is genuinely gross. And again, I say that as someone who grew up with the confusion of being very attracted to Lara Croft.
I'm sorry, I can normally manage a level of composure, but Emma, you need to hear this. You said that NovemberHotel equated attractiveness to skinny white straight women exclusively. You would have had to have meant exclusively because you said that he was racist and bigoted straight after that. You have inferred that the guy is an incel that will never touch a woman, and you randomly just referred to a guy that just happened to be on screen minding his own business as part of a plague of mediocre white men with microphones. And now you're claiming that because he prefers this Harley Quinn skin over the other one that's absolute trash, it's because he wants to masturbate to it? Why would anyone like you? Why do you deserve anything but ridicule? You just make up random shit about people based on how you have stereotyped them. Like, this is so easy. Most of this, I can just repeat what NovemberHotel said right after you misquote him. NovemberHotel's original video contains 0 mentions of masturbation. Spoiler alert. Emma is going to mention masturbation 14 times in this video, and it's completely based on what she has imagined white men do in their spare time. And normally, I find that when people do this, they are projecting their own personal habits and what they choose to think on. But in good faith, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and not jump to the assumption that you spend a lot of spare time thinking about random men's self-pleasuring. Instead, I'm going to say what I really think, and this is my opinion. You are a snake. You bully your audience under the threat that they will be sexist, racist, or bigoted if they don't agree with whatever you make up about other people and practices. And you are terrified of facts or anything that actually matters. Everything you have said is a fact up to this point were actually your opinions. You will close your eyes and champion anything that affirms the optics of inclusion because it means that you can be your authentic self. A misandrist wearing the skin of a bubbly caring soul, and I bet you love it. Because I'd wager that this pretentious persona, this is everything to you, and it's pathetic. That's my opinion. I hope I'm wrong. Like, I would much rather that you are someone that is lost in the source of content creation, and that you are just making a life mistake, but you are so full of venom that it is just hard to believe that it's naivety. In fact, you know what? You and Andy Pants Gaming deserve each other. Go look him up, I'm sure you'll love him. You're the same picture with a different filter. Like, I knew when I started analyzing this reaction, we were going to reach the point where it became blatantly obvious that this is exactly the progressive shilling that no one wants in the gaming space, but I didn't realize that the person behind it would be so unaware that they would spend 30 minutes calling a person sexist and racist, watch that Dustborn clip, and then have the goal to not recognize that it's their spitting image and dismiss it as comedy. Well, you are the joke. And you probably missed it because you spend the large majority of your life obsessively categorizing people by race, sex, and gender identity. So, of course, you could not pick up on the similarity between you and a woman of color. Get some fucking new glasses, please and thank you.
You can have exaggerated sexiness in a game, especially if it's done with humor. Again, I grew up with games like Lollipop Chainsaw and stuff like that. You can do it. I think, personally, it's a more consistent overall experience if you make the men stupidly, conventionally sexy as well and over the top in the same way.
Oh, okay, so these games are okay, as long as they're ones that you chose to play, right? Gamers were saved! Emma, our moral arbiter, is here to tell us what games we can play!
They've massacred Harley because she doesn't wave her ass in your face like she's walking the catwalk when she's walking down the street like a normal human. How do you think that that's an okay position to have?
Interesting opinion. I don't think I've heard anyone describe Harley Quinn as a normal woman, but maybe she's onto something. Let's see how women in real life choose to depict Harley Quinn when they roleplay as her. I think given the choice, most normal women do not depict Harley Quinn as a quote-unquote normal woman. I dare say that maybe the majority of women have the same idea as the men, and I think that you just have the unpopular opinion.
We want complex characters, they say. And what they're actually mad about is this.
Oh, the Arkham series is far more complex with its character portrayal than Suicide Squad. I think you're just shooting yourself in the foot here. It's a better looking character, and the characters are more complex. Everyone would love it if they just made another Arkham game instead. No one is going to be like, actually, I want the one from Suicide Squad. You're literally on your own on that one.
Oh my god, how long is this clip?
Not long enough.
Do you think he was jerking off while he was editing? Probably, right?
I mean, with the latest Dragon Age, they're touting their most inclusive character creator. But you can't create anything that resembles real people.
I am a 108 pounds woman who sits for 15 plus hours a day. I am not even in my prime here, and you're telling me this is your 100% on the bum slider? Explain how this is your most inclusive character creator yet, because I can't even make my skinny bum in the game. I don't get it. Who was this character creator made for?
I'm a really conventionally attractive white woman, and I can't even make my bum the right size in this game. NovemberHotel realizes that's bait, right?
Not at all jealous. That's not bait, and you would know that if you looked up the Twitter account that's right in front of your face.
Are you fucking... This is a joke?
Why is... Okay, I don't know who this is, because, NovemberHotel uses a lot of footage without crediting whoever the footage has come from. I'm assuming he didn't record all of this footage himself. But why does he look like exactly the sort of person...
No, go on, say it. Exactly what kind of person do you mean? We already know that you're neck deep in bias, so why stop short on the most famous streamer mentioned here?
that would watch this video and complain about not being able to make the women's bums bigger? I do think that you should be able to make bigger characters.
Oh good, we agree, so why are you so mean to everyone?
But that kind of man, you know exactly what I mean.
No, we don't know exactly what you mean, and I think that everyone on the internet would like an explanation as to exactly what the fuck you mean.
Is pissed off that the bum doesn't go bigger is just so hilariously cliche. It's like gamer dudes are trying to double down. They're like, okay, we've been perceived as like neckbeard, basement dwelling, gross dudes who just want to fap to hot women. And we're gonna double down. We're gonna say, yeah, that is us, and this is our community, and games are for us because we're gross. It's so weird, dude.
Nothing wrong with cliches. If there were, I'd be making fun of your hairstyle. And there's nothing wrong with guys living like basement dwellers if they want. Like, why can't men be like that? I'm personally just a married guy that works a 9 to 5, but I think men should be allowed to live the lifestyle they want if it's within their means. The only disagreeable part is where you make up that they think that all games are for them. No one said that except you.
Apparently, the global population has no butt, and everyone has A-cup boobs. And I'm not sure how that's inclusive, but it seems like someone at BioWare is offended by natural anatomy. But at least you can select pronoun.
But he wants all of his characters to have big boobs and butt. That's not inclusive either.
Yes, this is obvious for most guys, but he's not advocating for that exclusively. You're just making that part up.
I agree that you should be able to make your characters... I think the funniest character designers are where you get all the sliders are allowed to go up and down. So you can have like the biggest thighs you've ever seen and then a tiny waist, and you can create the most incredibly insane looking characters. That's funny and inclusive. All character like sliders should be like that, in my opinion.
Oh good, you get it. Everyone agrees. We want the sliders to work.
But stop pretending that you weren't just showing Harley Quinn's ass for 5 minutes on the screen because you're upset that you can't fap to it.
Ah shit, we lost her.
You can have top surgery scars turned on. I cannot imagine anything more intellectually devoid and creatively bankrupt than this. This is a fantasy world, and the only way to remove a person's breasts are the exact same way that we have in real life.
It's not that deep, bro. People just want to make characters that look like them.
It is actually more deep. More specifically, the common finding is that they want to make idealized versions of themselves. And also, not every male that plays as a female character is participating in some sort of voyeurism. Speaking for myself, I almost exclusively play female characters if I can because it's something that I can't be in real life. I'm not the norm, but my reasoning is not uncommon either. But this is a possibility that you seem to gloss over very readily. People are far more complicated. I think you have a really bad habit of stereotyping men you don't know anything about. For example, the streamer that you claim that you don't know very well, everyone else knows very well that he's not going to use the bum slider to make a hot female character because he pretty much always plays as a dude.
Most games like this, especially BioWare games, have scar options. You have lots of scar and tattoo options, famously, in these games, typically.
We are aware, and that's exactly why it's performative. It would have actually been easier for them to just put the scar pattern in the palette with the rest of the scars, and they would be like any other scar. Everyone in the know would know, and most people would be otherwise unaffected. You clearly don't get it. This game is advertised as being the most diverse and inclusive character creator, yet every character also has a head that is too big for its body. And you can't fix it with the character creator. You also have two sliders that functionally do nothing. The Kunari look like handsome Squidward with horns. And the in-game choices and options are a severe reduction to anything in the series, including your choices from Inquisition. So yes, a lot of this is just not up to par with the older titles, and the inclusion aspects are the most pushed selling points in place of what was there. I think it's quite obvious that this is inauthentic pandering, and it is a functional downgrade.
This is a world where people are able to change into other animals, but somehow you can't change into the other gender. This is the most surface level
I bet he has never ever had this problem with facial scars. It's a world of magic and you have a scar on your face? Excuse me? He's never had a problem with that. It's because the majority of people who have scars from top surgery or breast reduction, things like that, would be trans people. And those aren't me, so I'm very pissed off that it's an option.
He also doesn't have a facial scar, and it's not a bespoke toggle, so it's kind of a moot point. But swords and sword fighting are a known precedent in Dragon Age already. Top surgery scars are not.
Basic, completely devoid of any creativity, a way to virtue signal that you care about trans.
It's not to virtue signal that you don't give yourself top surgery scars to prove that you're an ally.
Jeez, how are you missing his point? He's not saying that players are virtue signaling, he's saying that the developers are virtue signaling.
This is creatively devoid. How can he pretend? That's so dumb. There's one person in the comments saying it's just immersion, no? Yes! If somebody has those scars and they want to look like them, they want their character to look like them, they can turn it on. The end. End of conversation. There is no, weird, anti-creative storytelling blah blah blah, because then you'd have a problem with other scars, and you don't, and you never have, because you're not using your fucking brain, because you're just talking about what makes me horny.
No, so we were just talking about precedents. For example, you get in a sword fight and you can cut your face, you have a scar. I think also something to note is that that is something that can happen to you. Most people have scars as a gateway to a story. Top surgery scars have one story, and that comes from our modern world. It is just a tacky way to insert 2024 into Thetis. There are 3 games before this one where this extremely controversial and current discourse does not exist. If it had, you would think that it would have already come up, but it hasn't, and no one asked for it. Now, if you wanted to introduce it, for example, you could create a precedent where top surgery scars do exist. In fact, maybe the concept of transitioning could have been the cornerstone concept being explored in the game, in the same way that science versus religion was explored in Dragon Age Origins. There are ways of authentically having a meaningful conversation in the world of Dragon Age, and the fact that I can think of that off the top of my head, and you would rather just try and bully your way by calling people bigots, is a difference in finesse. Or, Just fix the weird heads, Kunari, the two sliders that don't work, the choices that you made in the previous games, and let us control our party, and this would literally not even be a conversation, because no one cares if the game is good. But it's not going to be good, and they chose trans inclusion as their shield. That deserves to be called out, and it's literally nothing to do with how any one person does or doesn't feel about transgender issues or people.
Character design matters.
Oh, people don't like this character because she's not sexy enough. She's not a super conventionally attractive white woman with blonde hair and big boobs and like permanent makeup in this fantasy world. So that means it's woke and bad. Just so, I feel like I use this phrase a lot, but it's so often true. It's so intellectually dishonest to phrase this as a big conversation about ruining games, about trying to force in diversity, when realistically, what it all boils down to is that I want people to either look like me or I want to be able to jerk off to them. That is incredibly shallow, bigoted, it's ludicrous.
Oh, I don't know. I think it seems more like that you have intentionally pursued a shallow understanding of what's being said off the basis of one video where you made up a narrative about men wanting to self-pleasure to video game characters.
This whole time he's kept up saying that certain people, the perceived audience, modern audience, don't exist. He's never gone on to describe those people because as soon as he does, then we can look it up and see that those people do exist. Hello, I exist.
Do you? Okay, well, did you purchase Concord, Suicide Squad, or Star Wars Outlaws? Because those were made for the non-existent modern audience. No, you didn't buy them? Okay, so put your fucking hand down.
Nobody would want to play as Geralt of Rivia if he looked like this. And nobody would want to play as Lara Croft if she looked like this. You'd never catch anyone cosplaying as a Concord character, or making fan art of a Concord character.
I wonder if that's true. Baz Concord fan art. Oh, look. There's some fan art. Oh, look. There's some fan art. Oh, look. There's some fan art. Here's some fan art. What do you know? Fan art of these characters does exist, because not everyone has the same opinion as you. Not everyone is a gross, sexist, white man gamer dude. Wow. Took 1 second to prove him wrong there.
Oh good, maybe the developers can print the fan art and then burn it to keep their hands warm while they wait to find out if they still have a job. Because it's certainly not enough to sustain its existence. Like, good on you for being pedantically correct on your molehill. But I think everyone's going to agree with this hypothetical. Let's say that there are two possible outcomes. One, the developers did what they did and the game dies, and most of the devs are probably going to get sacked. Now two, they do what NovemberHotel says, and what are the odds that it would have succeeded longer and it would be a better source of income for the people and they get to keep their jobs. There's a precedent for this happening, by the way. The game's called Snowbreak Containment Zone, where this is a gacha game that pivoted really hard into fan service and has saved the studio. So like, the guy has a point, but I guess to you it's just better that those people probably won't have jobs because you found a few people on the internet that like the character.
Want to see beauty and masculinity in their media.
They want to see beauty and masculinity, but only masculinity in the male character.
Daria Existent is pretty popular, so you kind of don't really have a point.
We are visual creatures, and this right here isn't grabbing anyone's attention or has anybody saying,
I think that's cool design. I guess I'm just a woke lib moron, because I think that design is cooler and more interesting than the same generic female characters I've seen my whole life. I'm happy to see those too, but why not both?
Well, did you buy it? No, you didn't buy it, so like, pay up or shut up. You don't get to advocate for stuff existing on behalf of an unsustainable audience that you aren't even a part of. Thinking that it's cool doesn't keep any of these devs in a job. Support the creators of the characters that you want to see, or just make the ones that you want to see like everyone else. Regardless of what you think, video games aren't just made for white men. People spend money on the products and the art that they want to see, and that is supposed to be the feedback loop. And I think that maybe you'll find that the largest gamer demographic might be Asian males. So at some point you're going to have to like transition to think of some horrible names to call them. I heard that white adjacent goes pretty well with racist DEI consultants parading as community managers nowadays.
One of the biggest problems with woke media is how sanitized everything has.
That is an objectively attractive person, so I'm not sure what is going on here other than racism, with this game being too woke, the character design here being too woke. That is objectively a very conventionally attractive person.
You mean that it's an attractive person in your opinion? Is this the point where I make up that you want to self-pleasure yourself because you find this character attractive, or am I going to be able to avoid this obvious low-hanging fruit? In any case, this is the face model of that character. You do not get from this to that without actively trying to get there. I assure you it has nothing to do with race.
Morality choices in games are practically non-existent, so players don't accidentally side with an evil faction. The hand-holding and the juvenile design behind every quest, line of dialogue, and character design makes me question why these games are even being rated M for mature.
NovemberHotel, I gotta tell you something. You might not have noticed this, you might not have realised. You can buy porn games.
I can't do this anymore. I was going to go through every major point of this whole video, but for the sake of my sanity, I'll just tell you that she keeps talking about white men masturbating over and over again. She's not really listening to the words, and she doesn't really have a point. If you feel like you want to hurt yourself, please go over to her channel, check that out. Or I would suggest a better idea might be to go to NovemberHotel's channel, but don't let my opinion influence you. I'll do one last clip just to wrap up because I have some closing thoughts on this.
You don't even have to describe what woke is. You can see it as clear as day, and its influence in the games.
He's never described it though. Just like he's never described the imagined modern audience, he's never described what the difference between having gay and black characters and being woke is. You don't even have to describe it, because that way, whatever you, the audience, perceive as being woke is what I'm saying, so that you agree with me. Because if I had to describe it, I would sound bigoted, because it would come out that I was being clearly racist and sexist, etc.
So I called Emma a snake before, and look, no one uses the word etc. while casually hurling socially damning insults like they're making a shopping list. Like, I'm sorry, but I'd just rather be seen as a bigot than be the kind of person that just regurgitates the 2024 approved Twitter slurs to bully my viewers into compliance. Like, shit talking I get, but this isn't a light ribbing. These are allegations that if you were accused of this in your workplace, you would lose your job. And that gives me the sense of just how detached from reality people that speak like this are. You know, I find it odd because she spends a lot of time expressing disgust toward men in general, and she just has no idea. Like, I listen to this and I just see someone where their insides are plastic and tar. They're so hollow that there isn't even the ability to human unless it's within their own political fencing, and I wonder if this isn't indicative of where we are headed as a society for both sides. Like, I do agree that there are bad parts in gaming, but all the options seem so bad. If you are like Andy Pence Gaming, you are just rallying for a witch hunt. If you're like the Act Man, you're just ignorant. And if you're like Emma, you're right back at witch hunts. I'd say that at least with the other two, like even Andy Pence at least knows the games that he talks about, but it doesn't really matter because it's just different gradients of shit in a shit-slinging contest. But do you know what? Emma here is the non-existent modern audience, and it's nothing to do with her sex, her gender, her race, her fashion choice. Emma is unironically a professional Bobby Kotick yacht feeder. Because she has an ideology, she's passionate, she actually believes that all of this is pure, and she has an audience. Like, I know Bobby doesn't work for Blizzard anymore, but roll with it. In one breath, it's like Blizzard is an evil capitalist corporation, and then in the next breath, we need to protect Blizzard because Tracer is gay. And never at any single point will the penny drop, because there is nothing quite as malleable as a simple fanatic. Concord, Emma wants these characters to exist for other people, but she didn't play it. Suicide Squad, she wants these characters to exist for other people, but she's not going to pay for it. Dustborn, a funny comedy that she didn't pay for or play. Star Wars Outlaws has a conventionally attractive character apparently, that she didn't pay for or play. Emma wants all of these things to exist for other people, the rare and equity-deserving minorities. Well, they didn't buy these games, their skins, their characters, none of it. Or more to the point, they didn't buy them enough. And in most of these cases, the devs that so bravely championed the cause of Emma's ideals, well, many of them don't have jobs anymore. Talk is cheap. Maybe too cheap. The modern audience isn't made up of people. It's made up of words. This non-existent modern audience is just the opinions of the Emma Thornes written down, said out loud, declared as fact and repeated over and over and over until no one knows who said it, why it matters, or why it demands compliance, but it sure sounds important. Some of us try to ignore it, some of us try to scream back at it, others just try to hope for the best. But it's not working. It's loud, it's obnoxious, and simply I'm just tired of the noise.